Is your team not performing well? Is morale low and turnover high? Are you falling further behind the competition? I'm here to help. I'm your host, Shani, and this is the Leadership Show, where business strategy and culture finally meet, and we make the long-awaited shift from rhetoric to results. I promise I'm not your typical boring leadership consultant, and I will help you get your shift together. Let's do this.
Hello, Leadershifters, and welcome back to the Leadership Show. I am thrilled today to introduce you to my guest, Greg Brenner.
Hello.
Wave hello.
Hello, hello.
So you guys, Greg is an Assistant Vice President for Talent and Organizational Development at the University of Miami. And
Yes.
Those of you who have been following me for a while or even for 5 minutes know that I am a huge fan of the University of Miami, also known as the U. And in addition to being a proud alumna, I am also, the University of Miami is one of my clients, and I teach some various leadership topics and do some executive coaching. And Greg is one of my main contacts at the University of Miami, but that's not all he does.
Huh?
He is also becoming a pretty well-known LinkedIn personality with his moniker, the HR Dad, and we will talk about that. He's also an actual dad, not just...
I am one. I don't play one on TV. Yep.
Right. But he is also I don't know that he's a father figure per se to his staff, but he is well loved by his staff, and that I do not... is not a claim I make by guessing. That is something I've experienced firsthand in working with Greg and his team. And so we're going to talk to Greg about his experiences and the shifts that he's made in his career and the shifts that he's seen at the University of Miami and whatever the heck else we feel like talking about. So
Awesome.
Welcome to the show, Greg.
Well, thank you so much, Shani, and thank you for having me. I think this is, I think you're doing wonderful work. I know you, obviously, from the work that you do with us, but the work that you're doing with the shift and this work that is really changing a mindset within corporate America and in our case, higher ed and healthcare, I think
Yep.
is very deserving work, and I'm glad you're doing it. So it's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. Well, let's start off by dovetailing on something you just said, which is higher education and healthcare. I bet not everybody listening or watching knows that the University of Miami is a bit of a holding company, if you will, for both the academic institution, the university, which has undergrad as well as graduate programs, medical school, law school, etc., and an entire enormous healthcare system that is pervasive, not just in South Florida, but we have outposts, in various places around the world in the form of U Health.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about how, from an OD and talent and leadership development standpoint, you see them as different, yet with some similar themes that enable you to effectively run programs.
No, absolutely. So there's this big umbrella, and it falls under higher education, but we're really, depending on who you talk to, we're in the higher education business, but we're also in the healthcare business. Very, very distinctly different businesses. However, and some would challenge me that is higher education, is not business. We're imparting knowledge and things of that nature. If you talk to
it is absolutely a business. People should make no mistake.
It's a big business, and it's they're both very much mission-driven businesses. However, how you get the work done is different, and
Sure.
our stakeholders are different. However, anytime you throw people into the mix of anything, there's always going to be work around that side, and so that's very similar. How you go about doing the work, how you strategize, how you do different things may look different because they have different outcomes and different types of things they're trying to achieve, but the issues and the strategies and what you're trying to accomplish are eerily similar, even being in very distinct different industries, I would say.
And I think that it's a great lesson for people who are in corporate environments, that this is a business too, and you may be managing very disparate businesses under the umbrella of one organization. And I think the U does something very well, which I want you to comment on in a second, which is using its brand, right? I mean, we do this, and this has become a ubiquitous brand. I mean, I travel all over the world, and you never know, in any random airport, I might see someone with a ball cap or T-shirt that's the University of Miami, and we do this, and it's, world known. So they've taken that brand and embedded it as part of the culture of the organization, and on both sides. So talk to us about the process that the university underwent to really capitalize on the brand in terms of shifting the culture.
Right. And so I think the brand, the U, came out of certainly within a lot of respects the football program, and the U and some players having called us that, and it really has taken a life of its own. You're right. You don't go many places where you don't see somebody with some logo that throws up the U and says, hey, it happened the other day. I was with my son at a national AAU basketball tournament. He's a teenager, 16 years old, and I had a U on, and I saw this bright orange, vest coming my way from another parent going to like a track and field event at Disney, and all of a sudden, from like the corner of my eye, our eyes caught, and we both had our hands full, but he managed to get his hands out and just do one of these things. And I was like, all right, it's such a strong brand. One of the things that we've done as an organization, and our leaders have done a great job with is that you can have a brand, but that also can be hollow at times, right? So we have the brand, but the organization doesn't always catch up. In this case, I think we've always had a very strong organization, strong leaders and strong people that work here, whether it's from a physician on the medical side to a faculty member to administration to frontline employees that fix things. We have all those type of positions. And one of the things that our journey has been around has been, how do you make sure the brand stays, strong? And you do that by having strong organizational values. And so we were part of some work several years ago to bring values to the University of Miami. And those are values. We have leadership behaviors, and we also have some service standards. And those help drive our not only our development that we do within our own group that you're very familiar with, but also when you come to the university, you come to the health system, you're dipped in what it is to be a Miami Hurricane, whether it's on the academic side or the leadership side. So intertwining those things, there's a lot of pride in the U, a lot of pride. We have to match that as an organization for the people that work with us, so that our stakeholders, be it our community, our students, our patients, each other, feel the same pride.
Yeah, I love the phrasing you use, that people are dipped in the culture, which takes drinking the Kool-Aid to a whole nother level. It's like, no. We're not just going to give you a drink of the Kool-Aid. We are going to dip you in the Kool-Aid.
Sure, yeah.
And Kool-Aid not with a negative connotation.
Right.
It's a very welcoming, warm thing. And in fact, why don't you tell us about, you were responsible for leading the effort to redevelop new employee orientation onboarding, and it's a program called I Am the U. Mm-hmm. And if you would tell us about, sort of how you developed that, and what were some specific things that you and the team did to make sure people felt dipped.
So one of the things that we were able to do is, through that process of that, kind of the transformation that we went through culturally as an organization, one of the outputs was to recreate or even have an orientation that is something that you wanted to have, that was encouraging, that was let the person know that they made a great decision to come work for us. And so there was a work group that was put together, helped us design it, and we were tasked to, right, here's a blank sheet of paper, go ahead and design it and make sure it happens. Very fortunate to have, as a wonderful tribe that supports this work, and they really the backbone of making that come to realization. And it really is it's on your first day of work, but it really truly is a welcome. It's not your stereotypical HR. Here's what you're going to get. Here's what's going to happen when you get fired. You know, one of those type of,
Right. And here's a long speech about benefits, most of which don't pertain to you.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we try to make sure it's about our values. It's about what we believe in. It's about our strategic focus. It's about how we're structured. But it's really about, the title is I Am the You. So how a new person is embraced and really loved by the you. And so it starts the relationship with somebody off on the right foot. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, because we're not. I haven't found a perfect organization, even in the top best employers in the world. There's always stuff that goes on, but it starts day one off on the right foot.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love is every single person who starts at the U goes through this. It doesn't matter if it's a super junior level job all the way up to a new provost. Yeah. Everybody goes through I Am the U on their first day. No exceptions.
And it's great because it's the ultimate equalizer. I mean, you could literally be sitting next to a senior vice president, and you could be, and this is not to put down it, you could be a plumber or an electrician sitting next to maybe the number one or number two person in the institution organization, and it's and they're having conversations. They're talking about their journey and how they got here. It's so powerful. So it's great from that perspective.
Absolutely. So something else I wanted to get your perspective on: education and healthcare are both industries that are under increasingly competitive pressures and regulatory pressures, and therefore, bottom line is always being watched.
Right.
So in a cost-conscious environment, which I know a lot of my listeners and watchers are operating in, what are some things that you recommend for talent management, leadership development that don't have to break the bank, that people can introduce into their organizations?
I think always the first thing is you have to meet your organization where you're at. And a lot of times people take that as, that's common sense. But a lot of times you want to get so far ahead and so far beyond where you're at that you can't get people to shift their mindset. So I think one of the things that you do is in some of our work, we're fortunate we have a small organizational development team, and we're able to go out and help people with strategies and figure out what are some of those problem areas and things of that nature. Also, at the same time, the organization has made it a priority to have operational efficiency and what we call administrative excellence, which ends up being, are you operating at the best way? Are you not necessarily being cheap on something, but are you being conscious of what we're spending the money on? If we need to spend it on X, are we doing that? So we do the same thing from our development perspective. So years ago, we used to have a catalog of say, I don't know, it was over 200 different courses that we would offer 270 times a year, and literally close to, pushing 300 days of development. And when I took over, I was like, let's stop that and let's see if anybody notices. And nobody noticed, right? Nobody noticed that we stopped it. And we had all this training, except for there was one person in purchasing who always asked me, what about that seminar stuff that we used to be able to go to? There's always that one person. And so we had to really shift our mindset to say, all right, let's be really, really smart on what we're spending our dollars on. So we wanted to invest heavily within our leaders first. We wanted to make sure that we had something for our staff, and that's where we brought in some of our online development. And now we're just in a process of building out a strong system to develop our leaders, not only from the senior levels, but to the front line. And then now we're reintroducing some pieces back into for the staff, whether it's for career mobility and things of that nature. So it's really being smart with the dollars that you have and investing heavily where you can, where you can have the biggest impact.
Yeah. And I love that it's leadership is where you can have the biggest impact, because then it cascades down. It's so important. And I still see that not enough organizations are investing in leadership development at any of the levels. And,
yeah,
and if they're not,
yeah. And sometimes where that's driven is it sometimes is out of ego, and sometimes it's out of, well, we know that. And there's that's a one saying, what happens if we develop all these people and they leave? And the old comeback to that is, what happens if you don't develop all these people and they stay? And so what do you do with that? We have all these people that are just starving for knowledge. And let's face it, whatever business your listeners are in, business is complicated now.
Yep.
There is more pressure to do more with less, to really figure out, and the speed of things, and sometimes things are slower than others, but a leader has to really learn how to adapt and change. At the same time, you're managing these people. So that skill set is so important to develop, and you have to focus in on it. In fact, one of the things that I've been on a mission on lately is not to call the soft skills anymore. I call those hard skills. And the business skills are those things that they teach you in your MBA, on how to manage inventory and how to manage, balance sheets and all that type of stuff. Those are business skills. Hard skills are what everybody always talks about, is that difficulty of getting a group of people to do what you needed them to do, at the same time having them feel part of something big, and so you have to invest in that. If not, you're just taking something for granted, which you would never do on supply chain. You'd never do that on accounting perspective. And when you really do think from a people perspective and the expense that it takes to have people employed, and you don't invest in them, that's just, to me, that's a poor business decision.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I have the same rally cry. It drives me nuts when people call these soft skills, because they're anything but soft. In fact, they're hard for some people to develop, right? Which is all the more reason that attention needs to be paid and practice needs to be devoted to it. And when we do develop our people and empower our leaders, then it results in hard dollar bills.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that translate into that very, very easily if you look for it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you also, back on the subject of shifting, you spent the early part of your career in the hospitality and restaurant space.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get hired at the University of Miami, and how was that shift for you?
So I lost all of my hair in the hospitality business. And so if you ever, no, the hospitality business is a great business. And so if any of your people are hospitality, I actually, that's what I studied. I really enjoyed when you really learn how to do two things in the hospitality business. Number one, you learn how to serve people. All right. Really, really important. And you learn how to do a lot with a little, right? So the restaurant business where I came out of is a penny business. And so you learn how to make a penny stretch. And so you learn everything about people, whether it's the people that you're serving or the people that are working for you. And so I took that, and I love that time in the hospitality business. And I was in operations. I owned my own restaurant. And then when I closed my restaurant, I've always, even when I was in operations, I had a knack for people. And so a former boss of mine said, "Hey, we have this HR position. Why don't you consider it?" I was like, "HR? I'm an ops guy. I don't know anything about people stuff. No, you'll be great. You're always talking about the workforce and people and doing things right by them."
Because you have those hard skills.
Right, those hard skills, right? And so we jumped into that in the hospitality space, and then I was fortunate, just about, I guess it's coming up on 8 years or so ago, able to come over in an OD role, organizational development role, and then it's grown since then. So we've been very fortunate to have great people and mentors and people around me and our tribe that just do incredible work and certainly props me up pretty high.
Yeah, I love it. Greg does talent management and OD for a living.
Mm-hmm.
However, he's so passionate about it that you've made it into kind of a personal brand for yourself with your LinkedIn presence as HR dad.
Mhm.
So tell us what prompted that, what's the journey been, and what's next?
So one of the things that people don't know about me typically is that I used to officiate college football, and I did it for many years. And I retired just about 2 years ago. And when I retired, and the main reason why I retired was that I was missing a lot of things with my kids, and I was missing events, and I was missing sporting events all on the weekends when I was gone. So I made a decision kind of at the height of my career to step back and not do that. So now I'm around a lot more. And my wife said, you need to find a hobby because you're around way too much now. So one of the things I wanted to do was I always loved to write, and I loved writing I write kind of the way I speak from the heart and things of that nature. And so I personally took up a hobby of writing and hired a writing coach. And so I was working with the writing coach, and I was always talking about people in the workforce and HR things. And I was always talking about my kids and then the intertwining of the family unit and what happens at work and how similar they are.
Yeah.
And so she goes, you know what you are, Greg? I was like, I didn't know what was coming next. She goes, you're the HR dad. And I go, huh? She goes, can you live with that? I go, yeah, I'm okay with that. And so I started using it. Now that we've got quite a bit of a following, and I kind of do things before work and at lunch and then after work. And then I just inactive on LinkedIn, and it's been a lot of fun.
It is fun, and I love watching the videos and some of the personal stories that you share, both in written form and in the videos, are heartwarming and interesting, and that's what people really love to hear, because anyone can pontificate about this or that, right?
Yeah, I try not to. I just try to be authentic, and in my time working with people, the thing you learn is that there's an entire person, right? And if you only talk to the business person, you'll just get the business outcome. And when you know that people go through crap in their life, or they go through challenges, or their life's not perfect, or they're dealing with all kinds of stuff, whether it's depression or kids and all those, divorce, all those things that happen, it happens to everybody, And so when you talk about those things, people sit there and they go, you know what, I'm not alone. And so it's been really, it's really been kind of amazing how that's kind of taken off a little bit. But I just love to merge both things, work and family, and the kids, and what are great lessons from not only the workforce but also the family unit. Yeah,
I love it. And what's next for HR Dad?
So I'm actually starting a podcast.
Great idea.
Crazy how I'm doing that. I'm starting it. I'm just setting up the interviews now, and it's a podcast called Everyday People, Big Stories, and it's about people that are everyday people that have big stories, and that's really, and I really kicked around the idea: do I do an HR podcast? What do I do? And I love talking with everyday people who get just the work done. They're in the middle of their lives. They're just trying to get by and do their thing. And a lot of times there are wonderful, wonderful stories that happen with people that just might be a waitress, or they might be a nurse, or they might be a fireman, or they might be a CEO that have an incredible story, that they've battled through something, or they have a great story to share of really that can help and empower somebody else to know that they're not alone, and they can certainly continue their growth as well. So I'm really excited about that.
I love that idea. You know what it reminds me of? Humans of New York.
I've never heard of that.
It's a Facebook page where that's what they do. They highlight humans of New York, and they're just everyday people, if you will, and they interview them and put Facebook posts up about little details about them. And it's so enrolling, because everybody's got a story, everybody's interesting.
And that's where the magic happens. And so one of the things that we're doing is that we're having people nominate other people. So you can't just say, hey, I want to talk about this. And it's not about selling a service. It really is about, now we'll talk about what they're doing in their life at one point in the interview, but it really is about their story and sharing sharing their journey that can maybe help somebody else. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, congratulations. And yeah, nothing but the best as you roll that out. I'm so excited. You'll have to let me know when it starts.
I will. Probably in another month and a half, we should be good to go.
Okay.
We're just want to get a bunch of recordings done first, and kind of squeezing it around work times is making it, so it's weekends and while we're recording or at night and that type of stuff. So we're we'll be getting that going as soon as we can.
Yeah. So good. Between the everyday people and recognizing that when we're at work, we're still a whole person, even though, people think that we should have some invisible wall between our personal lives and our work lives. It's impossible, especially in this day and age. And it reminds me of a story that another one of my clients tells a lot, which is heart-wrenching almost. She came home from work one night and her daughter was crying, and she was like, "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong?" And the daughter looks at her and says, "I hate your job." She's like, "Why?" And she said, "Because your job makes you sad." And so it was a wake-up call to her to be like, wow, like not only am I enduring whatever I'm enduring at work, but look at how this is affecting my kid.
Yeah.
And what's the domino effect that could have? What are the reverberations that could have,
Yeah, so I'm in a unique place being in human resources, and be able to impact and understand the issues that can occur within a workplace, but also understand that, it just doesn't end, just like your story you just told. It just doesn't end when they leave the front door of the building, and you take that home. And likewise, you can learn these lessons so many times. My kids teach me a lesson on. My daughter told me a similar thing the other day. She's 13, so she doesn't hold back. She's 13 going on 40. And she just told me, she's like, "Look, Greg," she didn't call me Greg, although sometimes she calls me Greg. She says, Daddy.
But she's trying to discipline you. She'll call you Gregory.
Yes. No, that was my mom. She knew I was in trouble then. But she said, "You're working all the time." And I was like, I gotta make sure I'm making time and splitting and doing, and every single person does that, and even if you're not married or you don't have kids, what you give back to yourself as well is so important. So I'm just in a lucky space to be on the HR side, and also being able to change that mindset where it's just not about policies and procedures and all these things. It really is about helping people live their life, not only professionally, but also support them in their personal journeys as well.
Yeah. Amen. So what is one of my last questions? What's one of the things that you've shared as HR dad that has gotten the biggest or best or most unexpected reaction?
So I did one video, and I had really hesitated doing video, and I worked with a person, and she's like, "You got to do videos," and I was like, "I'm not doing videos. I'm an internal guy. I work at the U. I'm really good. I'm not doing videos." She goes, "No, you really need to do videos." So I did one or two, and I still survived. I didn't hyperventilate. I did all this. And then I did this video of, I don't know if you could tell, but through this little camera, but I'm not the sveltest looking person. I have some body to me, and so I did this video when I was walking and talking about trying to get in shape, and as I was huffing and puffing on the first time walking again, and talking about just about that exercise and kind of reinvesting in yourself, something along those lines. And so so I posted it, and I went to bed, and I had like a couple hundred people look at it. I thought, that was pretty cool. A couple hundred people looked at it. And in the morning I wake up and I see there's been 10,000 views. And I looked at it, I was like, something's wrong with my phone. It's like, so something, what is wrong? This thing something's not right, And so then I looked, and I saw what happened was an influencer had commented on my video post, and she has this large following, couple million people. And all of a sudden, so I was in meetings all day, and then so I got to lunch, and all of a sudden at lunch there's 40,000 views. And then I'm like, all right, then I go back to my next set of meetings, and now at night, and now there's it was over, last time I checked, it was like a month or so ago, last time I checked, it been at over like 80,000 views, 90,000 views. And it was really, obviously it was, I think it was because of me, but it clearly was about Bridget Hyacinth, who's a big influencer on LinkedIn, had commented it. And that was just kind of like the start of it. And all of a sudden now I had these followers and things of that nature by just really one person's comment. So
what do you think it was about your video that caused her to comment on it and so many other people to want to watch it?
The biggest thing that I get, and I ask people if they, if they comment, what would you like most about it? And 9 out of 10 times they say, number one, it's so real, it's so authentic. It's not staged, it's not, pontificating on something. It's just somebody going through life and struggles with whether it's weight management or eating too much or not eating enough or whatever it is, somebody's drinking too, whatever it is, people have crap that they go through. And so I think that part resonates most with people, and far and above and beyond that authenticity piece is huge. So, which is really easy for me because that's the way I lead. So it's an easy switch to a different type of platform to kind of share that. So
good. I love that. Well, folks, let's thank Greg for joining us and review some of the key lessons that we learned throughout this conversation today. And I want to challenge you to, if you don't already know, what is your brand, both as part of an organization and as a leader? Because HR Dad, yes, is your LinkedIn personality, and it's kind of been your personal professional brand, which is why it feels so natural for you. Because that's how you influence culture, is by owning who you are and being authentic. So every leadershipper watching this, I want you to pay specific attention over the next month or so to your brand and how it relates to your organization's brand. And to also think about, are you being a servant leader? I mean, we sort of touched upon the benefit of you having spent time in the restaurant hospitality space was you learned how to serve people. And that is something that's necessary regardless of the industry you're in. And servant leadership is obviously kind of a hot term or hot concept over the last few years. And I also loved that you shifted when you quit refereeing football into something else to be enthusiastic about that wasn't totally the office, even though it's, HR Dad is related to what you do. I can see just in viewing you and being one of your followers that it's so much more than that. And I can never emphasize enough to leadershipers how important it is for you to be a whole person and to figure out what it is for you that fulfills you and lights you up, and to do more of that and to do less of the shit that drags you down. I feel like too many people spend too much time doing things that really drag them down. So those are just a few of the highlights that stood out to me. Greg, how can people reach you if they have questions and or when you're ready for them to watch Everyday People?
Well, I think the best way is on LinkedIn. That's where I kind of hang out. I am, you could always reach out to me. My email's there, but you can, from anything you like, call me or email me at greg@thehrdad.com. Nice. We're in the middle of building that website, and you can always reach out to me there. But LinkedIn is where I kind of hang out the most, and I'll get back to you eventually. I really try to get to know my connections a little bit. So I've really developed some great relationships with some people, and it's truly helped professionally because you learn so much from other people. So it's been great. So I'd love you to reach out and either follow us or connect with us. I'll really enjoy that. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And leadershifters, I will also be promoting Everyday People when it comes out, because I think it's going to be an awesome podcast. Knowing Greg and just the whole concept behind it is fantastic. And you know how to reach out to me. Hello at theleadershipproject.com and all of our various and sundry social media outlets. So let's thank Greg again for joining us today on the Leadership Show. And I think it would only be appropriate for us to end by throwing up the U.
Of course.
Bye.
Bye. See you, Shani.